Hey, welcome back to the Industry Insight podcast. Today we're going to be speaking with Jim Black. He's a really cool dude from what I've known him for. Like, what is it now? For like a couple months. So,
Yep,
Jim, could you tell us a bit about yourself and what you do?
sure. Well, I do a number of things. I'm a corporate and international business transactions and human rights lawyer located in New York. And when I'm not doing that, I'm a professor of compliance and ethics at Hofstra University Law School and also in New York. And when I'm not doing that, I'm a non-voting delegate to the United Nations. And I do work in under the areas of the rule of law and human rights. Most of the day, I'm a lawyer. I'm a corporate lawyer, though.
Yeah,
As Arnold knows, because we work together on a bunch of things.
yeah. You've been a lawyer for like 35 years now. So,
Uh, 37.
oh wow. All
Yeah.
right. So how did you
hmm
start that journey?
I was, it was something I always wanted to do from being a youngster. I always liked the idea of advocating for people and helping people, and always was drawn to being a lawyer from probably when I was like 5 or 6. It was all I ever wanted to do.
Yeah, yeah. I know just from reading about you and doing a little bit of research that you are managing government bids for like companies. So like, how did you
Well,
even get into that?
Well, I used to work for a very large government contractor called Northrop Grumman, a big U.S. military contractor, and so effectively, what I help clients do if they're going to work with the U.S. government, which is a very unusual space to work in. Contracting with the government is not like contracting with anybody else. I help them to figure out how to bid on a contract and then how to work on how to perform under the contract.
I know for like one of your clients that that was a little bit of an issue, and like you had to negotiate with like the Department of Defense. Like, how did you even do that? Like, could you tell us a bit about that?
Well, sure. Without going into too much detail, attorney-client privilege and all that. Yeah, that was just one example. It happens quite a bit where the government, there'll be a dispute between us and them, and you don't want it to go too far south and have anything bad happen. So you sit down and you negotiate some sort of a deal with them, and that's true of a lot of things. People will have deals and have contracts, and you will, in your experience, as time goes on. But too many people are like, "Well, I'm going to run to court," and that's always the wrong answer. Not, no offense to all my barrister and litigator friends, but you always want to try to sit down and negotiate something. I mean, my sort of view on these things is that if everybody's a little unhappy, then I've done my job.
Got you. Okay. So you are like a United Nations delegate. So could you tell me
Yes,
like what that even is and like
of
why
course.
you wanted to become one?
Well, I what we do is we don't have a vote, obviously, because we're not a country. I'm with the World Jurist Association. It's an international organization of judges, members of parliament, members of government, lawyers, law professors, and law students. And we advocate generally for the rule of law, effective as opposed to the rule of force. So that, in other words, it can't be what the person in power says. It has to be what do the rules say? What does the law say? And as a non-voting member of the UN, we're able to attend most meetings. There are a few that are secure that we're not allowed to attend. And we're given opportunities here and there to speak and to share our views on how, whatever they're debating, whether it's climate control, whether it's in other environmental issues, whether it's human rights, whether it's uh, tax and corporate issues, they always have to remember that whatever they do, um, the forefront of it is that everything has to be by the law. I get to go to the UN a few, every month or so, sometimes more often, sometimes less often, depending on the rest of my schedule, and basically just be able to share that message with other NGOs, non-government organizations, and representatives of the different member states.
How did you even get into that? Because it isn't like an invite only type thing, is it?
It is. Well, as I said, I joined the World Jurist Association in 2019, and was involved in several different things that we do. And because I'm in New York, they needed some new members of the UN, and they appointed me, and here I am.
Got you. Okay. So as you did say, like you wanted to become a lawyer since you were a youngster, right? So
Mhm.
what if you could go back and give some advice to young Jim, just starting out his first job, like what would you say?
Um, be patient. My law career got off to a rocky start. Even though it's gotten better now, obviously. So I would say just to be patient and to believe in yourself, because it's very easy when things go wrong to start doubting yourself. And you can't. You have to believe in. That doesn't mean that you're cocky. It doesn't mean that you know it all, because you don't. After all these years, I sure don't know it all. And the older you get, the more you realize things you don't. But you surround yourself with people who are smart and hardworking, and you create good teams. And oh, yeah, that's basically it. Is just to not give up. I mean, Winston Churchill once said that, and again, it's a little bit of an extreme statement, because when you're going through hell, keep going. So just get through the bad times, because the good times come.
Of course, yeah. So speaking of like, the negatives, right? Like what was the biggest like oh no moment in your career then? And like how did you bounce
Oh,
back?
gosh, there have been a few. After a couple of false starts in jobs, it became, do I really want to do this? Am I equipped to do this? Um, and then I found the right job with the right mentor, and it kind of went from there. I think that was probably it. I mean, at one point early on in my career, I did have a little bit of a um, sort of a crisis of, is this really the right thing I should be doing? And I realized, of course it is. It's what you've always wanted to do. Um, there are going to be good days in any career you choose. There are going to be good days and bad days. And I think the other message too is it's never too late to reinvent yourself. I mean, over the years, I've had situations come up where, I needed to uh, move jobs. I needed to go to a different place. I needed to do different things. And you just have to be flexible enough to know that when that happens, you do it.
Okay. So what was like the most rewarding like case or like project that you've worked on then?
There've been a few. I mean, a lot of what I'm doing now has been very rewarding, fighting in the human rights space, helping to stand up against transnational oppression of countries like Russia and China and Iran, and helping dissidents to be able to fight against them. I find that particularly really, really rewarding. And I guess as a professor, just seeing my former students succeed and become very good young lawyers, and several of them actually work for me. So I've got a group of our associates are actually my former students. And seeing them progress and staying in touch with them and seeing them grow, whether they work with me or not, is also very, very, very rewarding. Um, and then I would say, in corporate, I've worked with companies, some of which were small and needed to get started and help them get on a good start. And some other ones would just had a trip and a fall, and needed to get picked up and get on the right track, and enjoy doing that as well.
Got you. Okay.
It's all about service and helping people, regardless of what you're doing. Whether it's in your industry or mine, it's all about service and helping people succeed.
Okay. So with like any of the projects that you have worked on, right? Did it change like how you viewed your work or like even yourself sometimes?
Yeah, because sometimes you do something and you're like, wow, um, I really did that. That was, you know, um, I made a difference, and that never changes. I mean, I was just in Moldova. I was an international election observer, and we helped keep things on track. And you walk away from it going, "Wow, we made a difference." And that it doesn't even have to be that big. It can just be, hey, someone was in a bad contract with someone because they entered into it and they shouldn't have, and they needed help navigating it, and I helped them. It's sometimes they're little wins, sometimes they're big wins, but Um, and you don't necessarily always want to, I'll use a U.S. baseball example. You don't always have to do grand slam home run. Sometimes, in baseball we call it small ball. The singles and the doubles get you runs scored and get you in the same spot.
Yeah, yeah, of course. Speaking of Moldova, right? Like, I know it
Hmm.
was your first time there, like
Hmm.
doing it. So,
Hmm.
could you tell us about your experience?
Of course. It was fascinating because again, the the Russians wanted, so basically there were two elections in Moldova at that time. One was for the presidency, and the other was a referendum on whether or not they were going to join the EU. Um, and just like the Brexiters in England, there were a lot of people in Moldova who wanted to kind of go their own course, but it really didn't mean go their own course. England is obviously capable of doing its own thing. Moldova, the anti-EU people were really people who were in favor of them staying as a Russian satellite, which Russia not being a free country would be tragic for the people of Moldova. And it's a very small country. It's a very poor country, um, but people are people, right? And they're they have to live their lives, and sometimes you just need to help them understand without being pretentious about it, um, which of the how to help them progress, both individually and as a society. So,
Okay.
mhm, mhm,
So, I know that you've worked for like two international companies as a
mhm,
chief compliance officer. So, how
mhm.
did you even become one? And, what was it like? Like, what did you do?
Okay, well, compliance basically means, well, the first slide of my course is ethics is why, compliance is how. And so the point is that compliance keeps you out of trouble. Compliance also makes sure you run the company. Another sort of axiom is doing the right things in the right ways for the right reasons, right? So that's what your basically compliance is. I started in compliance in a very narrow area, which was excuse me, export compliance, because the U.S. government limits both whether it's commercial or military stuff, who can use their materials and technology. And from there, I started branching out. And the one company I worked for had some government issues, and they needed to show the government that they could run the company in the right way. And we built a compliance program, and that's everything from training people about things like gifts and bribes, or not to sexually harass somebody, or not to, don't lie, never lie, cheat, and steal. All the things you learned in grammar school, they apply in the corporate world. Except the ramifications are much bigger in the corporate world if you get caught.
Of course, yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay.
Mhm.
So you've had roles that like most people could only dream of. So like what are like a couple, surprising things that you've learned that isn't like what most people would expect?
That everybody can make a difference. I mean, by the way, I'm with you on that. I do things sometimes. I'm just say to myself, how did I get here? How do I have this opportunity? And some of it is, as Professor McGonagall said in one of the Harry Potters, 10 points to Gryffindor for pure dumb luck. Um, so there's that. And there's also putting yourself out there and saying, I'm only going to go this way once. I've got to make sure I'm making a difference. Um, I have a plaque on my wall that says something along the lines of, I will only come this way once, so any good that I can do, any difference that I can make, uh, let me make it because I won't pass this way again. And I think that's a big piece of it, is to realize that you can make a difference. Whether it's in your case, whether it's just helping someone bring their business from one level to the next through the marketing that you're giving them and the leads you're giving them. That's a bigger deal than a lot of people have. Oh, it's just marketing. It's just revenue generating. Yeah, but revenue pays, it pays for everything, right? Um, and you need to remember that. So I think, as I said, I think it's just a question of that I've always sort of been open to, if and I guess in some ways a little adventuresome, even though I tend to be a generally conservative person and I'm very conservative protecting my clients. Um, Sometimes you got to go out on those limbs. Otherwise, otherwise you miss out.
Yeah, yeah, I completely agree with you. Was there like a moment where you like felt like that you just made it?
Yeah, and then something happens and you didn't make it anymore.
Oh man.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah. Look, life is hills and valleys, and if you don't have valleys, you don't enjoy. If you don't have the darkness of the valleys, you don't enjoy the sunshine at the top of the hill. Um, and also you never want to necessarily sort of jinx yourself and say, yeah, I've made it, everything's going great. But no, there are different times in my career and my life personally where I felt like I'm having great successes and things are going really well, and I feel like I'm making a difference. And then there are other times when I feel like, yeah, I'll joke, I'm just going to, crawl under my desk in a fetal position and cry because things aren't going well. Um, but um, the one of the wisest things I ever heard about whether it's situations where things are going marvelously or things are going horribly, it's the same rule. This too will pass away. Whatever situation you're in, the situation will change. So if it's great, remember it's not going to be this great forever. Um, you know, uh, it's just like, if a person who does those things gets high or drunk, you know what? They're not going to stay that way forever. They're going to come down. And when things are really down and things are not going well, um, things will improve. Things will get better. The world continues to turn, and you just have to be open to that and ready to just understand that whatever you're going through now, it'll be different tomorrow, but that's okay.
Of course, yeah. So like from your experience, right? What do you think
Hmm.
are like the biggest traps that like companies fall into?
We always did it that way. This is how we've always done it. That's a big, big trap. And because the world changes, and if you don't change with it, you'll be left behind. And of course, that's problematic. I think that's one. Um, and the other are sort of two sides of the same coin. One is um, being irrationally afraid of failure, and the other is being irrationally believing that you'll always succeed, because neither of those are true. You'll sometimes things go wrong, and you have to accept it, deal with it. And the other thing one last thing I would say is regret. You need to learn from every experience. Need to learn from your successes and your failures, but learn and move on. You can't sit there, because sitting there and regretting is living in the past and living over everything. And even though H.G. Wells wrote about the time machine, it doesn't exist. You can't go back. You can only go forward and learn from what you did and let go of it.
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah. So like for someone like who wants to start in law, right? Like what do you think is like one inside tip about like the industry that you've worked with, like that you probably wouldn't learn in school?
Well, a lot of things you don't learn in school. Well, I'll tell you what I tell my students, and oftentimes I do this with law students, is don't forget everything you learned in life just because you're learning the law. I tell people the sky is still blue. There's still 24 hours in a day. The laws of gravity still exist. Um, in other words, that the things you learned about in life, whether it was in business, whether it was in personal relationships, whatever it was, still apply. Just because when you're in law school, they like to take your brain and kind of stir it up and make you think differently, which you need to as lawyers. As a lawyer, you do need to look at things from different perspectives and be able to look at things from multiple perspectives. It's almost like you need to be able to look through a prism glass or a kaleidoscope and see all the different, and a little bit like who's the Marvel character, Doctor Strange, where he says like, there are 2,467 possible endings to this. And sometimes you need to be able to tell your client, look, and I'll do this all the time, look, there are multiple endings to this. You have some power over what the ending is going to be, and in some cases you don't. So here are your choices, and here are the outcomes of those choices.
All right. So what advice would you give someone that wants to be a lawyer then?
Do it if you really want to do it. Law school is hard. Law school is draining. Law school is an emotional roller coaster. Law school is traumatic. And I tell people, don't go because your parents want you to, or don't go because you think you're going to make a lot of money, because some do and some don't. Go to law school because you want to go to law school and you want to be a lawyer and you want to help people, whether it's in corporate, whether it's in family law, whether it's in estate planning, whether it's criminal law, whatever it is. Do it because you really want to. Because if you really don't want to do it, the pain you have to go through to get there is not worth it.
Okay. Do you have any like final notes that you want to mention before we end this?
Well, I want to thank you for including me and letting me be on your podcast today. It's a pleasure being here. Um, and yeah, and I guess, like I said, the last thing I would say, and I've said this sort of before, is um, be open to reinventing yourself. Things happen, the world changes, you change. Um, Roll with it. It's a big, beautiful world out there. Don't be afraid to take chances within reason.
Of course, yeah. Now,
Yeah.
Jim, where can like people find more about you?
Well, on my LinkedIn, James Black, my Twitter, which is James Michael B, capital I, or at JMBIIESQ, or my LinkedIn, James Black. So that's where you can find, those are the two places that you can find me professionally.
All right. Well, everyone, I appreciate you guys listening, and yeah, bye bye.